Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Is it just me? Is the world getting crazier? Welcome to my exclusive video, the greatest Superman movie of all time. On today's video, we are going to be talking about every single Superman movie ever made. Now, I'm not talking about Superman and the Mole Men and things like that. I'm talking about Superman, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4, Superman Returns, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman. That's a Superman film as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about Justice League, but we're definitely going to be talking about the other ones here today. You know, I may not be that well versed in the Superman comics. I know them, but I don't know them so well. My introduction to Superman was through Superman the movie, and that's the first movie we're going to talk about today. Isn't it interesting? All this kind of nervousness about Birds of Prey reshoots and rewrites and things like that. Guess what? Superman the movie actually had a previous director called Guy Hamilton. And unfortunately, because he was a tax exile in London, he couldn't carry on because they were in Italy. They were going to film Superman the movie in Italy. But then the Salkinds, who were the producers, who actually were making this movie, realised that London would be cheaper, so they went to Pinewood. So then they brought in Richard Donner, who had already had success with The Omen. So very interesting when we talk about the director of the It movie and It movie 2 directing the Flash movie, and people saying it's going to be scary. Well, let me ask you something. Was Superman the movie scary? Not in the slightest. It's not about being a horror director. It's about directing the movie you're on. So it's ridiculous. So Dick Donner did a great job with Superman the movie. But the best thing he ever did was bring in the very talented Tom Mankiewicz to rewrite this movie. It had already been written by the author of The Godfather, Mario Puzo, who'd spent days and days at DC Comics, smoked, was a cigar-smoking chain smoker, kind of a big guy, great character. But basically, Tom didn't want to rewrite Superman the movie. He'd already rewritten quite a few movies, including a couple of Bond movies, and he just didn't want to do it anymore. So Dick Donner turns up, dressed up as Superman. They were good friends, and he convinced him. He said, you just couldn't turn the guy down. Tom Mankiewicz did a great job. Let's not keep on saying writing this movie. Basically, I think like Man of Steel and even Batman v Superman, Superman the movie is a creature of its time, of 1978. Because in 1978, people needed Superman. People needed a hero. The times were a bit, I don't know the dates of Vietnam and Nixon and all that, but I think it was just coming to the end of that. And people wanted something to inspire them. And I think it was a bit like Star Wars the year before. Star Wars inspired people. And I think this is what Superman the movie did. Now, in its essence, not in its subject matter, Superman the movie really does reflect the inspiration that Superman is, mostly in the comics. But it's definitely not based from anything from the comics. Not really. It's not based on a comic book story. The origin is very, very faithful. The stuff in Smallville, without Donner's and Mankiewicz's Smallville sequence, there would never have been a Smallville TV show. And this sounds pathetic, but my life would have been very, very poorer. I think at the time Smallville came out, I'd always loved Superman, but that flame was dimming because there was no media really. There was no TV or there was no films for years. So I think without that Smallville sequence in Superman the movie, we don't get Smallville. I think the Smallville TV show was inspired by that. And it's really great. But Tom Mankiewicz, it was his idea to have the Kryptonians talk with stilted English, classic English, very, very well spoken. Marlon Brando, really doing it great as well. But I think I want to talk about Tom Mankiewicz and Superman the movie because he doesn't get the credit he deserves. Really, Superman the movie is the movie that it is because of Tom Mankiewicz. He puts a lot of love in it, inspiration. He obviously, I mean, Tom's no longer with us, and you can go and look at all the bonus features of Superman the movie on YouTube, and he's a really nice guy, softly spoken guy, but really, really cares about Superman. And you can tell his passion and pride and what he achieved with writing the movie. There's no question, Dick Donner did an impossible task in showing that a man could fly. You know, there was no CGI. There was a couple of effects houses, but it was really difficult because when he took over, Guy Hamilton had done a couple of kind of tests to see how they were going to make Superman fly, but it was shit. And Dick famously said, "That's it." And so, look, to make a film of that, of a superhero movie back then, wasn't easy. Now it's easy. The MCU guys, it takes them, 3 or 4 months to shoot a Marvel movie now, and they're just putting them out, innit? It's like a factory, isn't it, making jam. Boom, next one, the next one, the next one. Back then, it wasn't that easy. And Dick Donner was a guy who wanted to do this properly. He believed in Superman. And that's where he's a very, what's the word he used? Verisimilitude, or whatever the word was, right? Which is kind of keeping the thing real and believable. Even though this is a fantasy about someone who doesn't exist and can never exist, let's make it look like it's real in that world. And it certainly was. And I think what they decided to do with Krypton was brilliant. And that's really stuck throughout the ages. We saw a lot of those elements of Superman the movie. Even in the Krypton TV show, going back to Smallville, and even in the Superboy TV show as well. Superman the movie is a fucking fantastic film. It really, really is. And it stands, people say it's dated, it's not dated. It's a timeless movie. From the Kryptonian scenes to Smallville and young Clark Kent. Now, Jeff East, who plays teenage Clark Kent, did a really, really good job. But a lot of you may not know this. Christopher Reeve actually did the voice. They dubbed over Jeff's voice. Now, Jeff didn't know about this till he saw the premiere, and he was really, really upset. But then when Jeff talks about it, because Jeff's quite outspoken, I love Jeff East. He's got great quality, even now when he talks about the film. He did a good job. My personal opinion is that we didn't need another actor to play young Clark. I mean, Tom Welling in Smallville was 24. Christopher Reeve was 24. They could have, I mean, even Henry Cavill looks like a great young Clark Kent in Smallville and Man of Steel in those scenes with Jonathan and Martha when they're in the car before the tornado. They really did. Even his acting was really good. So I know that Chris wanted to make it realistic, so it was actually showing that he was playing the same character. But I think, even though I love Jeff East, Christopher Reeve should have played young Clark Kent, maybe in whatever age he was back then, right? It would have worked. Chris looked really young, and I think that was a mistake to dub over Jeff's voice, but great scenes in Smallville. Then it becomes a comic book. In Metropolis, it's all, you've got Perry White, I mean, Jackie Cooper, who wasn't supposed to play him, actually. Another guy was supposed to play him, but he had a heart attack. He didn't die at the time, but so basically, Dick Donner rings him up and says, "Hey, Aces, you've got to come here now. There's no time to waste because we need you." So Jackie Cooper, a great Perry White throughout the movies. And then we got Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. Absolutely the comic book Lois Lane. She's a bit cocky. She's a bit arrogant. She talks too much. She doesn't let anyone talk. She's absolutely fantastic. I think she's the joint Lois Lane with Erica Jo Ryan. It's my joint favourite, definitely. Erica from Smallville, of course. I think when I look at the one the Arrowverse have chosen for Tyler Hoechlin, terrible. Good actress. I like her in Grimm, but she's no Lois Lane. It's as simple as that. Anyway, we're moving away from the subject. Then you've obviously got Jimmy Olsen, and Jimmy Olsen, and played by Mark McClure. Perfect. Absolutely, you must have a Jimmy Olsen in your Superman movie, and that's the one criticism I have of Snyder and Man of Steel. As much as I love Man of Steel, and believe you me, I do love Man of Steel, and you'll see that later on, I think that Jimmy Olsen is so important because he's you and me. He's this ordinary kid who becomes Superman's best friend. Now, you don't really see that greatly represented within any of the Reeves Superman films, but at least he's there. At least there's a kind of a relationship. So if I was writing, well, I have written a Superman script, obviously never going to happen, but Jimmy and Clark and Supes have got a really tight relationship. And that's right, and that works. People like that. Some people think he's an irrelevant character. Not for me. He's you and me. He's our way into the story. And I've said this before, much like the companion in Doctor Who. So the casting for this. Now, what I will tell you is this about Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman is no more a comic book Lex Luthor than Jesse Eisenberg is. Both these versions are great versions, and I like them both, by the way. And when I heard Jesse was cast, I was like, what? But then I thought, this is one of the greatest young actors of this generation, and I thought he's going to do a good job, and he did do a good job. Whatever people say, he was a great Lex. We'll get on to him. Gene Hackman was a great, jovial Lex Luthor. Now, I suppose when you look at Tom Mankiewicz's development of Lex Luthor, you might say, why did he make him so campy and funny and basically just after land? Because Tom had experience of writing Bond villains. In a lot of ways, Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor is kind of a Bond villain, although he doesn't want world domination. But those villains were never that complicated, were they? And Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor isn't that complicated at all. But as a kid, I enjoyed him. Again, I hadn't read the comics. I didn't know who Lex Luthor really was. If I did, I would have been quite disappointed in their version of Lex. But it works for Superman the movie. It works for Superman 2, and it even works for Superman 4. We'll talk about Superman 4 as well. So Superman the movie, for me, is one of the greatest Superman movies ever made, superhero movies. And let's be clear here. When you ask, where did Feige get the kind of idea to make the MCU movies the way they are, it's from this series of films. They're very bright. They're very inspirational. They can be funny. The thing is, creatives of this generation who are adults now love Superman the movie and really believed still believe what Dick Donner did. And even when you hear about the Avengers Endgame and Age of Ultron writer-directors saying if they made a Superman movie, it would be more like the Christopher Reeve Superman, it's because they all grew up inspired by that movie, and that's why they became creatives. So if you love Man of Steel, you shouldn't be triggered by that. Everyone has a right to like what they like. But Superman the movie, and by the way, I love that when he's chasing the missile. This is what I'm talking about. They didn't have CGI. If Zack Snyder was a director for this movie, he would have struggled because Zack is very, very clever at adapting CGI technology to look amazing, but he would have struggled. Dick Donner, didn't come from effects. So this would have been all foreign to him, but somehow he got the team there at Warner Brothers to create something special. And by the way, what I just said about Zack Snyder, it's not a criticism. I'm just being honest. And I'm talking about modern day directors all round. They're not all round good movie directors. They're very good, technically gifted directors. But you asked them in 1978 to make a Star Wars movie or a Superman movie, and they would have struggled. Superman the movie is a major achievement because it wasn't easy to create what they created. But the film itself, Superman the movie, is fucking amazing. It's beautiful. And you know what's great about this film? It's for children, adults, men, and women. Everyone came into this film. And this is what you need for a Superman movie. Right. Let's talk about Superman 2. Now, Superman 2 had kind of some of the problems that Justice League did. Basically, the Salkinds, the producers who owned the rights at the time, and Dick Donner, who directed it, fell out. They didn't get on during Superman the movie. Dick wanted to make the best movie he could make, and these people just wanted to make things on budget and cheaply. So basically, Dick falls out with their producer, Pierce Spengler. He says if Spengler's involved, I won't be. They sent him a telegram saying they used to send. Basically, to you kids, it's an email, right? But basically, it's not the same, but it's kind of an email, but it just would take longer to get. Anyway, they sacked Donner. So they already had Richard Lester watching over Donner, ready to take over during Superman the movie. So basically, Lester takes over. Now, they work with Lester because he did the Three Musketeers in the second one as well. So they already knew him. Now, let me be clear here. Richard Lester did a really, really, really good job with Superman 2. I think Dick Donner's version would have been better. It's pretty much like talking about the Snyder Cut. We did get the Donner cut in the end, but ultimately, because he had to use some of their scenes, it was a bit difficult for him. But Superman, look, but let's just talk about Superman 2 as a sequel, as a movie. This is a very, very good film. Now, it's not all in all action, but then Superman the movie wasn't either. Superman 2 basically tells the story of Superman falling in love and the consequences of that. He's now been established on Earth. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. You get the great sequence of the terrorist heist in Paris and him flying towards that. But then he spends time with Lois. Lois finds out Clark's Superman, and they spend time. And literally, there's a beautiful scene in The Fortress of Solitude where Susanna York, a.k.a. Lara, says to him, "But consider, you can be hurt like an ordinary man." And all of that she says to him. And I always cry when the music starts for that. I thought it was a great scene. So this really examines a mortal Superman. Superman, a.k.a. Clark, a.k.a. Kal-El, is not a soldier. He's not been trained. He's been trained by his father, but he hasn't been trained to fight. He's been educated about the world and the galaxies and all of that, but he doesn't know how to defend himself. So that scene in the restaurant with that truck driver is absolutely beautiful. It just shows how naive Superman was. Naive to give up his powers, but he gives up his powers for love. And that's what Superman is. He's a very naive young man from, a farming community. He grew up in a small Kansas town, Smallville. He didn't live in the world. He wasn't exposed to the darkness of life. So he's a very naive character. And I think what Reeve did and what Donner did in the first movie, it really showed us that. So he gives up his powers, then he has to get his powers back to fight Zod. Terrence Stamp, Sarah Douglas as Zod and Ursa are absolutely brilliant. Absolutely masterfully, deliciously bad in Superman 2. And you really see them as a threat to Superman. Terrence Stamp is a great General Zod. You don't really understand the character's history. And really, he doesn't have great motivations. It's kind of, I just want to conquer this place. Obviously, he doesn't know he's on a whole planet, so he calls Houston the planet Houston, so that's kind of hilarious. But one of the things as a kid watching this movie, which I loved, and I thought it took it on a bit from Superman the movie, we saw these three villains using their powers against Superman, and Superman using his powers to defend himself. This is a great seeing Superman fighting these supervillains in Metropolis. As a kid, I really dug this movie. Then we get Superman 3. Now, a lot of people don't like Superman 3. I think Superman 3 at the time made $100 million, which obviously in today's terms would be called a flop. But back then it did quite well. What do I think of this movie? At the time, I quite enjoyed Superman 3 when I was a young man and I didn't know any better. Obviously, the Salkinds had fallen out with Margot Kidder, who played Lois, so they kind of squeezed her out in the movie. And they brought in Annette O'Toole, who obviously plays Martha Kent in Smallville. She played Lana Lang in Superman 3. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. Annette O'Toole always had great quality as an actor. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of Clark getting to know his childhood sweetheart again. It was a bit of a change-up as well. Ross Webster, Robert Vaughn as Rob Webster, I thought he was really, really good. And a lot of people didn't like Richard Pryor's comedy as Gus Gorman. As a kid, I quite enjoyed all of that. And Lorelei, and she was hot, wasn't she? But anyway, and then was it Ross Webster's sister? You had some great comedy moments with her. I thought it was an acceptable Superman movie. It was okay. It was funny in places. It's not the greatest Superman film, but it's enjoyable. Now, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now, I remember when Christopher Reeve actually rang up Tom Mankiewicz, the writer of Superman the movie, and asked him about his idea. about doing a film about nuclear arms. Chris wanted to make a commentary about the nuclear arms race, which of course was a big thing, America versus Russia back then. And Tom said this to me, he goes, you should never put Superman in the position of having to solve real world issues. And I think I did this with my Superman script. When we look at the flashbacks in my script of Superman in the Second World War and being kind of pressured to solve that war and kill Hitler, I make it clear that Superman makes a stance that he doesn't kill and he can't involve himself in these human conflicts. And I think I respect Chris for wanting to do this, but in the end with Superman 4, Chris was betrayed by the Globus boys, Menem and Urim Globus. They were involved with Cannon, and Cannon made things really, really cheap. They made the Masters of the Universe film, so they withdrew the budget of this film, and in the end, the effects looked terrible. But again, as a kid, I saw this in the Superman, and I actually loved Nuclear Man. Now, Mr. Pillow, who plays Nuclear Man, is it Mark Pillow? I can't remember his name. Anyway, and he never wants to talk about the film, by the way. But Superman 4, when you look at it now, is a betrayal of a movie. They betrayed Christopher Reeve. You look at it now, and it is a terrible Superman movie. But even now, when you see Nuclear Man's, burning the ground he walks on every time he steps, the footprints, it was pretty awesome. And look, it isn't a great movie, but I think if you and your kids sit there and watch it, you'll enjoy it. So then we had to wait 20 years for another Superman film. Now, this was bang smack into the popularity of Smallville. Smallville was massive, and I think it was very problematic to make a Superman movie back then without involving Smallville. I think that would have been kind of exciting. But Superman Returns lands a year after Batman Begins. The big mistake, and I made a video about this, that should have been the beginning of the DCEU cinematic universe. They would have got in there before Marvel. You would have Batman Begins, Superman Returns, that sequel, the Dark Knight trilogy sequels as well. They did a Green Lantern, for crying out loud, in 2009. Big mistake. So when they were marketing and, hyping up Superman Returns, I was extremely excited. I was a big fan of Bryan Singer, and to be clear, I didn't know about his exploits away from the movie industry, but I respected him for what he did with X-Men, and especially X-Men 2. He did an amazing job on those films, and I thought this guy is going to make a great Superman movie. But he was obsessed, like many of us, with Superman the movie, and he wanted to recreate that film. That was his big mistake. Brandon Routh was supposed to be Christopher Reeve's Superman, but he wasn't. Not because he didn't look like him or act like him. It's because when you look at the writing and you look at the decor of the Daily Planet and things like that, it just wasn't the same universe. Bryan Singer should have and could have made an awesome Superman film. I liked Superman Returns. I mean, some of the effects are pretty, especially when he's flying around the world at the end. That's even pretty bad. For someone. You see, the thing is with Bryan, he's not really used to effects and CGI. When you look at his background with The Usual Suspects, he comes from independent film, and CGI wasn't his strong point. And I think this is the problem. But I think everyone was blinded with how well he did with X-Men, that they thought he loves Superman. He respects Dick Donner. He even asked Dick Donner's permission because he'd already been working with his wife on the X-Men movies. So he was very integrally linked with Dick Donner. So he wanted his permission, and Dick Donner loved his idea. We all did. All of us who grew up with the Christopher Reeve movies were very excited with what Bryan Singer was attempting to do. But he didn't pull it off. I still think elements of Superman Returns are great. The bullet in the eye, saving the plane. I like the fact that this Lex Luthor's a lot darker. Again, without going into Kevin Spacey's lurid activities away from the movie industry, a very talented actor, and he was a great Lex Luthor, but he wasn't Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. That was the mistake, that they were trying to continue that franchise. If Bryan makes his own thing, even with Superman's son Jason, a great idea, but that should have been Connor Kent. That should have been Superboy, and that would have been awesome. So Superman Returns for me is a 5 out of 10 movie. It's not a great Superman movie, but there are elements, especially when Superman, we all think Superman's going to die. He's in a hospital. And then he does the whole Brando speech to his son Jason at the end. Very emotional. So I don't hate Superman Returns, but I think Bryan Singer was the wrong man. I think Brett Ratner, who was going to do the film before him, was the wrong man. And this is the problem with Warner Brothers. They need to understand. And I think now with Walter Hamada, they understand to get the right people to make these movies. So Superman Returns, 5 out of 10 for me. I was obsessed with it at the time because it was the only Superman movie out there. But now I see the reality of the situation. Kate Bosworth, look, a lot of people hate Kate Bosworth. They hate the fact she was wearing a wig. People go on about her forehead. I think Kate Bosworth did a good job. I just think they made her too unlikable. The way she was kind of bitter towards Superman for going away for 5 years. Again, an interesting creative conceit. Look, I like it. I like Superman Returns. But I think if it's its own movie instead of a continuation to the Reeves Superman, you've got a very good film. And he had a great idea, Singer, for a Superman Man of Steel movie, which is what it was going to be called. It was the sequel to Superman Returns. It was going to be all about Brainiac, and Superman fights Brainiac, and by accident, Superman actually kills his son Jason because Brainiac kind of disguises himself as Jason, so he kills the wrong version. So it would have been a great movie. Bryan Singer, I think, is a great filmmaker, but the wrong guy to do a Superman movie because I think instead of being in love with Superman, he was in love with Superman the movie, and I think his motivations became twisted. So Superman Returns was gone. And then finally in 2013, which is just under 10 years, Warner Brothers had decided that they wanted Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer to develop a Superman movie, Man of Steel. Now, at this point, I don't think they even knew if there was going to be a DC extended cinematic universe. So what the idea was, though, that Christopher Nolan was going to have this godfather role running the DCEU. The problem is Christopher Nolan didn't want to mould a DC extended cinematic universe. So he brought in Zack Snyder, a very unpopular choice, unless you're a Zack Snyder fan, which I am before you all start. Man of Steel looked beautiful in the trailers. The action, the fighting, the effects, and this is what I'm talking about. If you want anyone to do a CG-heavy movie, you knock on Zack's door because the man is a fucking artist. He really is. I could watch his movies all day. And Man of Steel is a great movie. But let me disperse a myth about Zack Snyder. He can also get great performances from actors. He got a great performance from Michael Shannon as General Zod. He is the best live-action Zod I have ever seen. And I'm comparing him against Colin Salmon in Krypton, in Callum Blue in Smallville, Terrence Stamp, who was great, by the way, a hard act to follow. But Michael Shannon's Zod was very different. And there was some faithfulness from the comics. This is the warrior Zod. This is the soldier. This is General Zod from Kandor. And all he cares about is protecting Krypton. In fact, on Krypton, before he saw what the council were doing was wrong, and he went about it the wrong way, he was like Superman on Krypton. He was a protector. He was a hero. And that's why him and Jor-El were friends. And I think, in fact, Zod probably inspired Jor-El to send Kal to Earth so he could become a similar hero. So Michael Shannon's Zod, and wonderfully written by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan. And this film is beautifully directed by Man of Steel. Man of Steel is one of the best films I've ever seen. The depth. But Man of Steel, as I said on the top of the show, like Superman the movie, is a creature of its time. So Man of Steel is supposed to be set in the real world. David S. Goyer, Deb Snyder, and everyone on this production made that clear. This is a Superman in the real world. Now, the argument between hardcore comic book Superman fans is that Superman is an escape for the fans. We don't want to see him in the real world. Now, I don't know where I sit with that. I understand. I love escapism too. And normally I would sit with the hardcore Superman fans. But you know what? This is such a good film. You put Superman in a relatable society, the society we see today. And it's an amazing film because the public don't embrace him straight away. Who is this guy? Like when the soldiers are asking the Colonel Harding, when he says, right, you know, you've got to shoot them. And he goes, what about the guy in blue? I said, all of them. But then you get that. And this is what makes me laugh when people say Man of Steel isn't an inspirational film. When Superman saves Colonel Harding from Faora and he comes out after he's been crushed by that thing. And Superman walks out upstanding, being Superman. Henry's brilliant in that moment, in all the moments in these films. And every time he plays Superman, yes, even in Justice League. And then Colonel Harding goes, this man is not our enemy. And Superman replies, thank you, Colonel. I get emotional. That's how much I love this character. This character means so much to me. And that's what Superman is. He's that purity. And Superman is pure in the Snyderverse. He's still pure, right? He gets angry. You know, that bit when he goes after Zod and he goes, you think you can threaten my mother? I love that. It's just Man of Steel. It's just Superman. He's still pure. He's just got a bit of, I suppose, a bit of attitude. And this is what I tried to do within my Superman script as well. So he's absolutely fantastic. This is a fantastic movie. I think Amy Adams is a great Lois Lane. She's a very contemporary Lois Lane. And I love the way they found a relatable way so she knows who Clark is. So there's none, oh no, I just found out you're Superman. She doesn't do that. She meets Clark first. He saves her life in the spaceship, right? So she goes investigating him and she finds him. And then she becomes sucked into this adventure. And the way David and Chris did that was brilliant. I want Lois Lane to be part of the adventure. Maybe I'd like her to be more of a journalist as well. I don't know if she'll play Lois Lane again, but the next version of Lois I would like. But she's a very, very good Lois Lane. She's a mature Lois. She's not a young Lois. She's not immature. I would say Erica Durance's Lois Lane is a bit immature at first, but she grows up within the series. I tell you, she's a great Lois, Erica. Go watch Smallville. But Amy Adams is a great Lois Lane. Oh, I tell you what, though, the Perry White we have in the Snyderverse is absolutely fantastic. And I can't remember the guy's name now. He's one of my favourite actors as well. But basically, people made a fuss that this guy is a gentleman of colour. I couldn't give a shit if he's fucking pink. You're talking about one of the great actors of our time, of people from my age group growing up. He's a brilliant, brilliant actor. And I'd say equally as an awesome of a Perry as Jackie Cooper. Now, he's a very different Perry White. He's very authoritative. He's well built. He can be intimidating. And we see I love it in Batman v Superman as well. And I think that's the film we're going to talk about next. Because that is the next Superman movie. People call it a Batman movie. I don't think it is. I think this movie is more about Superman in a way he's kind of treated. And this is, I mean, Batman's very important in Batman v Superman, of course. But this is Superman's story. And the sacrifice he makes in the end of this film makes it Superman's movie. It really, really, really is an amazing film if you're a Superman fan. Now, not all Superman fans are going to agree with that. But Batman v Superman is continuing the story of a contemporary Superman in a contemporary real world. And I think it really, really, really does work. And to see him, one of my favourite things about Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is seeing Clark Kent at the Daily Planet. He's investigating Batman. Batman's branding people. Superman's never heard of Batman before to that point. And, Clark doesn't get it. Why would you do that? If you want to fight crime, do it the way I'm doing it. Inspire people. Why do you have to hurt the villains? That is exactly who Clark and Superman actually is. But Batman v Superman is a great movie for so many reasons. And as I said about Gene Hackman, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is no more of a comic book Lex than Gene Hackman's version is. But he's still a great version. He's still intelligent. He's still power hungry. And he hates Superman because he believes Superman has a God complex. Lex was abused by his dad, obviously. And he sees Superman as the same beast as his dad, and he wants to take him down. One thing you see from Eisenberg in this film is his hatred and dislike of Superman. You see on the roof how smug he is when he reveals to Superman that he's holding his mother. You know, he thinks he's got him. And he says, Mother of God. He keeps on referring to Superman as God. And it's fucking brilliant. He hates God. He hates his father was the God in his world, and he couldn't fight against him when he was a kid. So straight away, he sees Superman with being a man of power. So he wants to take him down. It's all part of Lex Luthor's psychosis in this movie. Now, a lot of people say, oh, he was acting like the Riddler, he was making noises. But the whole point is, this guy is so far gone, so insane. Eisenberg is one of the greatest actors we have in this industry. No question. Even if you don't like him in BVS, even if you don't respect him in that film, he's a great actor. And he himself does a great job. Batman v Superman is, for me personally, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, but I want your comments. I want to know. I'm talking about myself now. Is a great Superman movie. I see it as a Superman movie, and I saw it at the time. This is a representation of Superman in the real world and not being accepted. Half the world love him, half the world don't. You see him when what is he, Puerto Rico, when he saves that kid and they're all touching him. That is a beautiful moment, and Zack Snyder makes that moment visually so beautiful. So, what is the great Superman movie? Now, even in Justice League, well, I'm sorry, I'm really sweaty. And you know what? I haven't paused this video at all. I haven't edited it because I'm really passionate about Superman and I just want to take it to its conclusion. So let's do that. And Justice League is really, again, all about Superman. It's all about bringing Superman back to help defeat Steppenwolf. So in a way, I don't want to talk about the problems of Justice League. I just want to talk about Superman's role in it. And actually, Superman's role in it, if you forget the terrible CGI on the upper lip, even in the camera phone interview footage with the kids, that's a beautiful moment if it wasn't for the upper lip. To see Superman the way the world wants to see him, to see Superman talking to children after he saves some people from a fire or from a tall building, or whatever he's done, and then to see what the world had lost. And that's why Joss Whedon did that opening sequence. Then they bring him back, and he's confused, and he's fighting the Justice League. He's fighting Diana, and you've got Diana saying, Wonder Woman saying, Kal-El, the last son of Krypton. Brilliant moments. So I think Superman's role in this is awesome. The race in the post-credit scene with Barry Allen. I hope one day, maybe, I'm not sure, did they actually film that whole race? Because if they did, and I don't want to release the Snyder Cut because I want to see the Snyder Cut. But I must admit, if Joss Whedon goes, I'm doing a director's cut of Justice League and I'm going to show you the rest of that Flash Superman race, sorry, don't take this as a betrayal. I want to see that race in its conclusion. So what is the greatest Superman movie of all time? I can't pull it apart between Superman the movie, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman. So that's very difficult. So I want you to decide for me, what is the greatest Superman movie? If I'm honest at this moment, I'm calling it a tie between those three movies. I know that's a cop-out, but I love Superman the movie, because without Superman the movie, I'll never fallen in love with this character. Man of Steel and Batman v Superman are works of fucking art. I can't pull them apart. Including Justice League, we've got 8 Superman movies, 8 movies with Superman in them. So we've been very, very lucky. Now, you can pick them apart, you could criticise them, but I think Superman was represented in all of them in a great way, and by the actor playing Superman, did a great job. And I'm talking about Superman Returns and Superman 4 as well. So I'm saying Superman the movie, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman are my joint 3 greatest Superman movies of all time. Thank you for watching, and let me know what your favourite Superman movie of all time is.